Imagine a hell where souls don't burn but freeze, where the ultimate evil, Lucifer, is not a fiery demon but a monstrous beast bound in ice, his three mouths endlessly chewing on the world's greatest traitors. And to escape this place, you must climb down his very body, flipping your entire world upside down. In this video, we will journey into the very heart of Dante's Inferno. We'll discover why unbaptized infants are condemned to an eternity of longing, how suicides become trees, and why thieves are transformed into serpents. We will travel through the 9 circles, from the antechamber of the indifferent to the frozen realm of Lucifer, and understand how Dante managed not only to survive, but to emerge and see the stars again. Watch until the end, and you'll see hell not just as a place of punishment, but as a mirror of the human soul, where every sin finds its own terrifyingly precise reflection. This is the very hell that confronted Dante Alighieri on Maundy Thursday, 1300. Lost in a dark and gloomy wood, he found himself in a deep spiritual crisis, midway along the journey of his life, having lost the righteous path. This dark wood is not just a metaphor, it's a state of the soul when a person recognizes their sins but sees no way to redemption. And his entire divine comedy, and here we face only its first darkest part, the Inferno, is not merely a fantasy tale or an adventure saga. It is a profound allegory, the greatest poem of the Middle Ages, guiding us through an afterlife that mirrors the human soul, a journey from sin and despair toward redemption and the light of divine truth. And our path begins right here, in the impenetrable thicket, where the first shadows gather. Just as Dante's despair reached its peak, his path to a sunlit hill of salvation was barred by 3 ferocious beasts, a leopard, a lion, and a she-wolf, symbols of lust, pride, and greed. Suddenly a figure appeared before him. It was none other than the great Roman poet Virgil, author of the Aeneid and the embodiment of human reason. Sent by Beatrice, Dante's beloved, Virgil becomes his guide. He alone can lead the lost soul from the darkness of sin toward the light of divine truth, but only up to the point where that truth demands a faith that lies beyond the limits of reason. Virgil takes Dante by the hand, and together they approach the gates of hell. Inscribed above is the ominous warning, "Abandon all hope, ye who enter here." These words are forever seared into memory. Passing through these gates, they don't enter hell proper, but its vestibule, a place of eternal restlessness and futility. Here languish the souls of those who, in life, were for neither God nor his enemies, who committed neither good nor evil, choosing indifference and a fear of commitment. These wretched souls, having never made a choice, are now eternally chased by swarms of wasps and hornets, while loathsome worms at their feet feast on their decaying flesh. Their fate is an endless, aimless wandering, a reflection of their passionless lives. Among them, Dante recognizes the shade of Pope Celestine V, who, according to legend, made the great refusal by abdicating the papacy, an act of indecision that condemned him to this eternal shameful existence. Leaving these pitiful souls, whose fate inspires more contempt than pity, Dante and Virgil reach the bank of the grim river Acheron, the first of hell's rivers, which separates the vestibule from true hell. Here they are met by Charon, the ancient white-haired ferryman, whose fiery eyes blaze with hatred for the living. He initially refuses to transport Dante, who is not yet dead and does not belong to the world of the damned. But Virgil quells his anger, citing the unshakable will of God, and Charon, though grinding his teeth, is forced to obey. The gnashing teeth of sinners, their groans of terror, and Charon's desperate cries accompany their crossing over the churning, sinister waters that divide the living from the dead. As soon as their boat reaches the opposite shore, Dante finds himself in the first circle of hell, Limbo. There is no physical torture here, no fire, ice, or enraged demons as in the circles below. The air is not filled with screams of pain, but only with endless, deep sighs. Limbo is the place for unbaptized infants, whose only fault is not receiving baptism, and for virtuous pagans who lived before Christ or without knowledge of the true God. Their punishment is not physical pain, but an eternal resigned sorrow, an endless grief born from the impossibility of seeing God. They are deprived not of heaven itself, but of the hope of ever reaching it. Here, among the honored shades, Dante meets the great minds of antiquity: Homer, the father of all poets, the wise Horace, the elegant Ovid, the profound philosophers Socrates and Plato, and of course his noble guide Virgil himself, who is also condemned to remain in this circle forever. In the heart of Limbo, encircled by 7 walls and a flowing stream, Dante sees the noble castle, the home of antiquity's intellectual elite. Here, in an atmosphere of ethereal light, gather the greatest philosophers, scientists, heroes, and poets whose names became symbols of wisdom and valor for all humanity. They engage in lofty conversations discussing the universe and the meaning of life, but their faces are forever shadowed by that same deep, inescapable sadness. They will never know true bliss, for the path to it lies not only through reason, but through faith. This castle is a vivid symbol of human intellect and virtue, which, however great and perfect, are insufficient for salvation without divine grace. The first circle of hell shows that not only overt sin, but also the absence of knowing God, or worse, the indifference to choosing between good and evil, can lead to eternal separation from Him. But if Limbo was a place of eternal, if noble sorrow, beyond its borders, hell begins to shed its mask of solemnity. Here, beyond the gates, where whispers of sadness give way to a distant roar, the true torments begin. Where every sin takes on its own terrifying physical form, and suffering becomes tangible, repulsive, and infinite. The first being to greet us on the threshold of the second circle is Minos, the ancient king of Crete, now transformed into a serpentine demon. He is not merely a judge, but a machine of justice, whose task is to assign each soul its proper place in hell. The sinner confesses their transgressions, and Minos, in turn, wraps his tail around himself a number of times equal to the circle to which the wretched soul must descend for its eternal punishment. And behind him, swept up in a perpetual whirlwind, are those who in life failed to control their carnal desires. This second circle is the realm of the lustful prisoners of their own unbridled passion. Their punishment is an endless hurricane that mercilessly flings their bodies about, offering them not a moment of rest, not a single point of stability. This is not just a storm, it is a mirror of their own lives. The disordered desires that once drove them have now become their eternal prison. Among these tormented souls, Dante meets the legendary lovers, Paolo and Francesca. Theirs is a tragedy of love born from reading a forbidden book, a story that became a symbol of doomed passion. Francesca, captivated by the tale of Lancelot and Guinevere, recounts how a kiss from Paolo led them both to sin and death. Their words, so full of sorrow and regret, pierce Dante so deeply that he faints, as if feeling the weight of their sin upon himself. But the journey continues, deeper still, into the third circle of hell, the realm of the gluttonous. This world is a foul, putrid wasteland, constantly battered by an icy rain mixed with snow and hail. Underfoot is a vile slush of freezing muck and filth, and the air is thick with a putrid stench that chills you to the bone. Reigning over it all is Cerberus, the monstrous three-headed dog who tore flesh from men even in life. He snarls, barks, and devours the souls, guarding his filthy domain. To pass him, Virgil must hurl a fistful of earth into his mouths, which momentarily pacifies the beast. Here, Dante meets a fellow Florentine, Ciacco, whose name may have meant pig or glutton. Ciacco, lying in this filth, foretells Florence's future political strife, painting a grim picture of civil war that once again highlights the deep connection between the Divine Comedy and the realities of 14th-century Italian politics. Further down, we descend into a realm where greed and wastefulness have found their eternal punishment. The fourth circle of hell is a place of ceaseless battle, where two massive hordes of sinners, divided into two groups, eternally shove enormous weights against each other. On one side are the hoarders, who maniacally accumulated wealth. On the other, the spendthrifts, who senselessly wasted it. Their torment is an endless, meaningless effort, a symbol of their attachment to earthly goods. They clash, cursing each other. "Why did you hoard?" cry the ones. "Why did you squander?" the others scream back. And it's striking that many of them, as Dante notes, are former clergymen, cardinals, and popes, whose greed, which should have been tempered by their spiritual office, was only amplified under the cloak of power. And now we approach the fifth circle, a place where not water, but malice boils. The marsh of Styx is not just murky sludge, it is a seething cauldron of anger, rage, and sullenness. On its surface, in a frenzied battle, the wrathful endlessly strike at one another. They bite and tear each other apart, submerged in an eternal, pointless fight that symbolizes their blind, uncontrollable rage. And below, at the very bottom, suffocate the sullen, those who drowned in despondency. Their moans and sighs rise to the surface as bubbles, testament to their eternal apathy and despair. We are ferried across this marsh by Phlegyas, another mythological boatman, his face contorted with fury. It is here that Dante confronts Filippo Argenti, an old political enemy from Florence. And for the first time, we see Dante not just feeling pity, but expressing an almost spiteful satisfaction as he watches Argenti being tormented by other sinners. This moment reveals the complex human nature of the poet himself, who, despite his spiritual journey, remains a man with his own passions and animosities. Crossing the Styx, we begin to see, through the thick fog and infernal stench, the outlines of the city of Dis, the capital of lower hell. Its crimson walls, wreathed in flame, rise before us, guarded by legions of fallen angels. They are not merely an obstacle, but a warning. Behind these walls await even more horrific and sophisticated torments, reserved for those whose sins were not of weakness, but of conscious evil. Hell now becomes not just a place of punishment, but a fortress, prepared to stand against even our guides. The gates tower before us, guarded by legions of fallen angels. They are not just an obstacle, but a warning. Behind these walls await torments even more horrific and sophisticated, reserved for those whose sins were not of weakness, but of conscious evil. Hell now becomes not just a place of punishment, but a fortress, prepared to stand against even our guides. And now, the sixth circle of hell, the city of Dis, opens before us. Its walls, crimson from the eternal flames, are dotted with mosques, a nod to Eastern, non-Christian heresies, and are guarded by demons, fallen angels who once rebelled against God. This city is a symbol of pure, undisguised evil, and its inhabitants, the heretics, are not merely sinners, but those who consciously rejected and twisted divine truth. Virgil and I passed through the flaming gates, which barely yielded even to our great guide, until a messenger from heaven descended to open the way. Inside lies an endless field littered with red-hot tombs. Their lids are cast aside, and tongues of flame erupt from within. Woe to you if you feel the heat radiating from these marble slabs. In each of these sepulchres is trapped a heretic, their soul condemned to burn for eternity. Their punishment is cruel and ingenious. These souls can see the future, foreseeing events that will occur in the world of the living, yet they know absolutely nothing about the present. Imagine the paradox. To know the fate of your descendants, but be utterly blind to what is happening right now, all around you, in your eternal prison. It is a hellish irony for those who, in life, prized their own intellect over faith, attempting to pervert Scripture. Their prophecies are hazy, like seeing through a dark glass. This is not just pain, it is desperate meaninglessness. Leaving the city of Dis, we descend to the next, even deeper and more repulsive level, the seventh circle of hell, reserved for the violent. Here are punished not those who succumbed to weaknesses of the flesh or anger, but those who consciously used force to harm others themselves or God himself. This circle is divided into 3 rings, each reflecting a different form of violence. First, we encounter the outer ring. Here rages a river of fire called Phlegethon, churning with boiling blood. Submerged within it are tyrants and murderers, those who committed violence against their neighbors by shedding blood, plundering, and oppressing. The more blood they spilled in life, the deeper they are immersed in this bloody cauldron. Patrolling the banks of Phlegethon are centaurs, the mythical half-man, half-horse creatures known for their ferocity and skill with a bow. They watch the souls vigilantly, preventing them from rising out of the boiling river. If anyone tries to ease their suffering, they are met with a deadly arrow. We see the great centaur Chiron, the wise teacher of Achilles, and the furious Nessus, whose blood caused the death of Hercules. Next, we enter the middle ring, the place for those who committed violence against themselves. There is no boiling blood or scorching fire here, only a grim, dense forest of gnarled, dark trees. These trees are the souls of suicides, those who, in life, dared to sever the bond between soul and body gifted to them by God. They have lost their human form and have been transformed into these silent, mutilated plants. Their branches are their limbs, and every leaf is their suffering. Circling above and tearing at their branches are the vile harpies, mythical creatures with the faces of women and the bodies of birds, their beaks sharp and their talons dripping blood. When the harpies rip off leaves or when a living person breaks a twig, black blood oozes from the trunk and the tree lets out a moan, for this is their only way to speak. In this same ring, among the trees, we witness another horrifying sight. These are the squanderers, those who did not directly violate themselves but mindlessly wasted their property and their lives. They are naked and torn, running through this forest, pursued by savage black hounds. These dogs overtake them, rip them to pieces, and carry off bits of their flesh, only for the souls to regenerate and be torn apart again. The punishment perfectly reflects the sin. In life, they tore apart their own possessions, and now they are torn apart by merciless beasts. Finally, we cross into the inner ring, reserved for those who committed violence against God, nature, or art. This place is a vast, scorching desert covered in hot sand. Above it falls an endless rain of fire, huge, slow-falling flakes of flame like snow in the mountains, but bringing death. Here there are 3 groups of sinners, the blasphemers, those who directly insulted God. They lie on their backs, facing upward, completely exposed to the fiery rain, and their torment endlessly increases, for they cannot even move. Among them, I see the giant Capaneus, who even in hell continues to defiantly curse Jupiter, affirming his unbroken pride. The Sodomites, those who committed violence against nature by turning away from its laws. They walk endlessly across the hot sand under the fiery rain with no chance to stop. The usurers, those who committed violence against art, human labor, and nature by drawing profit from barren money. They sit hunched over, staring at the purses hanging from their necks. These purses are adorned with their family crests, and these emblems burn, symbolizing their shame and their attachment to earthly wealth even in hell. We stand on the edge of an abyss leading even deeper into the most terrifying circles. And there, before us, appears Geryon, the monster who is the very embodiment of fraud and malice. His face is deceptively human and kind, but his body is that of a huge, scaly beast resembling a lion or a dragon. And behind him is the deadly tail of a scorpion, ready to strike at any moment. He is the symbolic boundary between the sins of violence and the sins of fraud, and it is he who will be our transport into the next chasm. Virgil and I carefully climb onto his back, and the monster, slowly and gracefully, begins its descent into the dark abyss, where the most sophisticated and cunning torments await us, torments for those who deceived their fellow man. And the monster, slowly and gracefully, begins its descent into the dark abyss, where the most sophisticated and cunning torments await us, torments for those who deceived their fellow man. Geryon, the embodiment of fraud with the face of a righteous man and the tail of a scorpion, gently lowers Virgil and me to the bottom of this new, terrifying chasm. Before us stretches the eighth circle of hell, male bulge, which translates to evil pouches. This is not just a circle, but a gigantic stone pit, resembling a colossal amphitheater, divided into 10 concentric ditches, or bulgias. Each ditch is a unique torture chamber where sinners pay for their deceptions and lies, and the punishments here are as varied and inventive as the forms of fraud themselves. The first bulgia greets us with the crack of whips. Here, in perpetual motion, scourged by horned demons, run the souls of panderers and seducers. Their sin was using the passion and trust of others for their own gain or lust, and now they are condemned to an endless run under the lash, symbolizing their own violence against the will of others. Next, in the second bulgia, a wave of stench so foul it turns the stomach washes over us. Here, submerged in vile excrement, wallow the flatterers. In life, their tongues were instruments of lies and sycophancy. Now they are forced to bathe in what is essentially the product of their own empty words and false promises, a disgusting substance that matches the filth of their sin. The third bulgia is a ghastly sight. We see pits from which only the sinner's legs protrude, their feet engulfed in flames. These are the simoniacs, those who sold church offices and spiritual favors. They are stuffed headfirst into the rock like planting trees, but the fire on their souls is a taste of the eternal fire that will consume them entirely when new sinners fall from above to take their place. The next ditch, the fourth bulgia, makes us shudder with pity, though Virgil rebukes me for it. Here are the diviners and sorcerers. Their heads are twisted completely backward, forcing them to cry constantly as their tears run down their spines. In life, they tried to look into the future, perverting the divine order, and now their vision is forever distorted, aimed not forward but backward into the past they so desperately sought to alter. The fifth bulgia is for the barators, or grafters. It is filled with boiling pitch where sinners struggle, while along the banks scurry terrifying demons known as the malebranche, the evil claws. These demons, with names like Malakota and Barbaricia that inspire terror, prevent the souls from lifting their heads from the bubbling tar. Their anger and ferocity are a metaphor for the chaos and corruption that bribery brought into society, blurring the lines of law and justice. The sixth bulgia unfolds before us as an endless procession. Here trudge the hypocrites, clad in heavy leaden cloaks, gilded on the outside. Their robes appear magnificent, but beneath the shimmering exterior lies an unbearable weight, a symbol of their false righteousness. Among them, crucified on the road, lies Caiaphas, the high priest who advised that Christ be crucified. His punishment is to be crushed by the weight of all the hypocrites who pass over him, as if he bears the burden of all their lies. In the seventh bulgia, we encounter the thieves. This is perhaps one of the most nightmarish spectacles. Their bodies are in constant transformation, from human to serpent, and from serpent back to human, endlessly in agonizing torment. This eternal cycle of metamorphosis symbolizes their predatory nature and the loss of their true human form due to their deceitful and hidden acts. They stole from others, and now their very essence has been stolen from them. The eighth bulgia holds the fraudulent counselors, those who use their intellect and eloquence to deceive and incite others to crime. Their souls are encased in tongues of flame that constantly envelop them, hiding them from view. Just as they hid their true motives behind brilliant speeches in life, their essence is now concealed behind a fiery veil, allowing only their tormented moans to be heard. The ninth Bolgia is perhaps the most gruesome. Here are the sowers of discord. Their bodies are perpetually hacked apart by a demon. Limbs are severed, bellies are slit open, heads are split in two. But then, as they walk the circle, their wounds heal only to be torn open again. This endless dismemberment symbolizes their role in destroying unity, be it religious, political, or familial. And finally, the 10th Bolgia is the last refuge for the falsifiers, perjurers, alchemists, and counterfeiters. They suffer from horrific diseases, leprosy, dropsy, agonizing fevers. The air here is thick with the stench of decay. Their sin was distorting truth and reality, and now their own bodies are distorted by disease, their existence a counterfeit, and their rotting flesh and foul odor reflect their inner corruption. Having passed through these 10 ditches, we see how inventive the punishments for various forms of deceit can be, from simple flattery to forgery and betrayal. These evil pouches are a true embodiment of how human ingenuity, when directed toward evil, turns against the sinner, creating a personal hell for them. It would seem that after all these elaborate punishments for deceit, from flattery to forgery, there could be nothing worse. But Dante shows us that there is something more terrifying than a lie. There is betrayal, an act so monstrous that the coldest, most silent realm of hell is reserved for it. The path there leads through the giant's well, where colossal guardians tower like buildings even in the pitch darkness. There is Nimrod, whose pride, legend says, led to the Tower of Babel and the confusion of tongues. His meaningless babble echoes through the abyss. There is Ephialtes, bound in chains, his inhuman strength paralyzed by eternal punishment. But not all the giants are hostile. Antaeus, the only one not chained at Virgil's request, gently lowers our travelers to the very bottom like a giant elevator piercing the final barrier between a world of torment and absolute evil. And there, at the bottom, a landscape unlike anything seen before in hell unfolds. No fire, no stench, no rivers of boiling blood. Only a vast, completely frozen lake, Cocytus. A dead silence reigns here, broken only by a horrifying, bone-chilling cold. This is no ordinary ice. Its surface is frozen by the gusts of wind from the gigantic wings of the one who dwells at the very center of this lifeless expanse. The cold here is not just a physical sensation, it is a metaphor for the absence of love, mercy, and connection, the very essence of betrayal. Each of its zones is a new stage in the fall of the human soul, a new form of monstrous treason. The first souls they encounter inhabit Cana, named after Cain, who murdered his brother Abel. This is for traitors to their kin, those bound by blood or marriage. These wretched souls are frozen in the ice up to their necks, their heads barely visible, their faces contorted in eternal suffering. They can neither move nor properly speak, condemned to a silent, soul-freezing solitude next to those they betrayed. Next is Antenora, the ring for traitors to their country, those who sold out their land, their people, or their city. Here, souls are frozen up to their necks, and their torment is even more severe. Among them, Dante discovers one of the most memorable figures of the comedy, Count Ugolino della Gherardesca. Like a wild beast, he gnaws on the skull of Archbishop Ruggieri. Ugolino was betrayed by Ruggieri and locked in a tower with his sons and grandsons, where they all starved to death. And now, in hell, his insatiable revenge manifests in this monstrous act, his eternal hunger sated only by the flesh of his tormentor. It is a horrifying spectacle, the ultimate symbol of a hatred that burns even in a world of eternal ice. The next circle is Ptolemia, named after Ptolemy, who betrayed his father-in-law Simon Maccabeus during a feast. Here are punished the traitors to their guests, those who violated the sacred laws of hospitality. These souls lie on their backs, completely submerged in the ice, and as their tears well up, they instantly freeze in their eyes, forming icy crusts. They cannot weep. Their sight is sealed in icy shackles, and they are unable to relieve their pain, even with tears. The eyes that once saw a treacherous plan are now forever sealed by ice. And finally, Judeca, the last, deepest ring of Cocytus, named after Judas Iscariot. Here suffer the traitors to their benefactors, those who betrayed their masters or patrons who had placed their trust in them. These souls are completely encased in ice, their bodies contorted into the most unbelievable, agonizing positions. Some lie flat, others are bent or inverted, but all are utterly motionless, frozen in an eternal agony. There are no moans or screams here, only absolute silence, because the sinners themselves are completely deprived of movement, their souls as frozen as their bodies. And at the very center of this icy Judeca, in the heart of all hell, stands the Lord of this abyss, Lucifer himself, or Dis, as Dante sometimes calls him. His colossal figure is frozen waist-deep in the ice, like a gargantuan monster forever caught in its own trap. He was once the most beautiful of angels, but his pride and betrayal cast him down into this abyss, and now his mighty wings, once radiant, have become leathery like a bat's. It is their constant beating that creates the piercing wind that freezes Cocytus. Lucifer has 3 faces, each a different color, symbolizing a perverted parody of the Holy Trinity. The central face, red, gnaws on Judas Iscariot, the greatest of traitors who sold Christ for 30 pieces of silver. Judas's head is completely in his mouth, with only his legs kicking outside, doomed to eternal torment. The other 2 faces, one blackish and one pale yellow, torment Brutus and Cassius, who betrayed Julius Caesar. In Dante's system, where the Roman Empire was a forerunner to Christianity, the betrayal of Caesar was seen as an act equal to betraying God himself. Brutus and Cassius suffer less than Judas, their heads hanging out, but they too are condemned to be eternally devoured by the devil. This scene is the absolute culmination of the entire journey through hell. Lucifer, once radiant, is now the embodiment of absolute evil and immobility, frozen in his own betrayal. He is the source of all cold and all torment in Cocytus. His eternal suffering is both his punishment and the cause of suffering for all others. This is not an active punishment like boiling pitch or fire, but a passive one, and no less terrible for it: the complete absence of warmth, love, and hope. And to escape hell, Dante and Virgil must pass through the very body of Lucifer, climbing down his coarse, matted hide. It is a symbolic passage that literally turns their world upside down, taking them through the center of the earth. On the other side, they emerge to see the stars again, a symbol of hope and light, heralding their ascent to purgatory just before the dawn of Easter Sunday. Thus, Dante completes his descent into the abyss, leaving the reader with the profound understanding that the most terrible evil is not rage or lust, but the cold, calculated betrayal that freezes the very soul.
Frozen into the lake of Cocytus, at the very heart of this treachery, towered Lucifer, a monstrous figure with 3 mouths, in each of which the greatest traitors of humanity were eternally tormented: Judas, Brutus, and Cassius. But as horrific as this sight was, it was also the gate to salvation, the most unexpected way out. Dante and Virgil would not just go around or leap over this colossus of evil, they had to pass directly through it. Without hesitation, Virgil began to descend Lucifer's hair-covered flank as if on a gigantic, repulsive ladder. Dante followed, clinging to the coarse, ice-caked fur that felt as vile as the creature itself. Each step was not only physically exhausting, but morally debasing, using the epicenter of all infernal filth as a springboard to the light. Imagine, you are climbing down the body of the devil, while his massive, leathery wings, which create the icy winds, blast you with a threatening cold. This descent was the culmination of all the horrors they had endured, but also the first step toward enlightenment. At a certain point, when they reached Lucifer's waist, Virgil did something completely unexpected. He did not continue downward. Instead, with immense effort, he flipped himself over, and Dante realized with terror that their position relative to Lucifer had changed. What had been down his body a second ago was now up. Dante was stunned, thinking they were somehow returning to hell, back to the torments they had just left behind. Are we back in hell? Must have raced through his mind. But Virgil patiently explained. They had just crossed the very core of the earth, its center. At this point, gravity completely reverses its direction. Until that moment, they had been descending toward the center of the earth. Now, having passed through it, they began to ascend away from it, but into the other hemisphere toward the antipodes, into a world completely opposite to the dark and damned Inferno. This was not just a physical reversal, but a profound metaphor. By passing through the very bottom of sin and understanding its depth, one can turn one's destiny around and change the direction of the soul. After this dizzying moment, Dante and Virgil continued their journey up a narrow, difficult passage. It was a winding, dark tunnel formed by nature, a sort of natural cavern through which the waters of the river Lethe flowed down toward Lucifer. The climb up this tunnel was long and exhausting, but every movement brought them closer to the light. They scrambled over boulders and squeezed through narrow crevices, feeling the air gradually grow cleaner as the weight of hell receded. And then, at last, after countless hours of climbing this hidden path, a small, circular opening glimmered in the distance. It was the exit. As they approached, the circle grew larger, filling with a faint but distinct light. And then, emerging from the dark womb of the earth, they found themselves on the other side of the planet. And there, above their heads, in the pre-dawn twilight, stretched the boundless, starry sky. Those stars, which Dante had not seen for so long, were not just celestial bodies. They were a symbol of divine love, hope, purity, and rebirth. After the pitch-black darkness and vile visions of hell, the sight of the stars, which concludes each of the three parts of the Divine Comedy, was a dazzling confirmation that mercy and light exist, even after encountering the deepest evil. It was the dawn, heralding Easter Sunday, symbolizing resurrection and a new beginning. It was here, on the other side of the earth, that the mountain of purgatory now rose before them, the next stage of their journey. The path from darkness to light, from sin to redemption, had only just begun. Hell had been traversed, its lessons learned. Now, having grasped the full depth of human depravity, Dante was ready for the ascent, for the cleansing of his soul, and for the rediscovery of hope. His journey through the 9 circles of hell was complete, leaving us with the understanding that even from the deepest abyss, by passing through pain and awareness, one can always find a way back to the stars. We have journeyed through the 9 circles of Dante's hell, discovering that it is not merely a place of punishment, but a profound mirror of the human soul. Here, every sin finds its own frighteningly precise reflection, revealing how our actions shape a personal hell where the greatest evil is not fire, but the soul-freezing absence of love. It is through this abyss, through recognizing the full depth of the fall, that the path to true ascent lies. But what does this journey mean for us today? Perhaps the key to escaping our own dark wood has always been hidden in understanding the true nature of evil and the path that leads through it, toward the light. What did Dante's hell look like to you? Share your thoughts in the comments. If this descent into the Inferno made you think, support us with a like and subscribe to the channel to continue our search for meaning.